Evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 22nd regular meeting of the Weaverville Town Council. Appreciate you all being here. Sitting this is really loud. Let's see loud you all. No good. Thanks for being here. So we are in session, and the first agenda item is the approval and adjustments to the agenda. And I would like to make a motion that we make an adjustment to tonight's agenda. Item 6C calls for a vote on the LBG apartment complex project on Monticello Road. Although we have, as a council, have had an opportunity to discuss this project in the past, many members of the community were not aware of this until as recently as last week. And so therefore, keeping up with our stated policy, or not policy, but our idea that we should not have a public hearing or a public input session and then vote on that same issue in the same meeting, I'd like to propose that we change that item C from a water allocation request to a public input session. That gives us an opportunity to hear from everyone who has an interest or idea about this project, and gives us an opportunity to learn from you all, and gives us then a month to ponder it, and then we would have this vote at our next month's meeting in September. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other questions about this? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much. So, this might be a little complicated. If you want to speak about the apartment complex on Monticello Road, you should sign up on the sign-up sheet, which I believe is at the podium. And we will still have a public comment session, item 5 on the agenda. That will be if you want to speak about anything other than the apartment complex. And then we will have the comments about the apartment complex project at item 6C. And I'm sure there'll be some confusion. As I call your name, we'll work it out. Okay? Thank you. The next item 3, is our consent agenda. Town Manager Coffey, would you please go through the consent agenda items?
Yes, and thank you, and good evening. Page 3 is the beginning of the consent agenda, and you have minutes from July 25th meeting. Following on page 7, you have your fiscal year 2022 year-end tax settlement report. You will find there, specifically on page 16, that the county has collected 99.84% for the last fiscal year, leaving $6,084 uncollected, but they will continue to for collection efforts in that area. On page 20, you will find a budget amendment. This is a budget amendment for donations. I believe you see this almost every meeting agenda. This is for $900 in donations to the community center or recreation complex project. On page 22, you have another budget amendment. This is specifically for the special revenue fund, to separate that out from the general fund for debt service for fire trucks, as well as accounting for fire inspection fees and revenues. Additionally, roughly $26 in a donation from the United Way of Asheville County. And then finally, $200 for donations to Cops for Kids. On page 24, you have another budget amendment. This is transfers from fiscal year 2022 that we just wrapped up. These are transfers between the fund balance and the capital reserve fund and capital project fund, essentially completing the construction and building phase of the community center. At $586,266.48 transferred from the general fund to the capital project fund. And then for engineering fees that have previously been spent on the water treatment plant capital project fund of $316,030 there to the capital reserve fund. On page 26, you have a request for minor modification. This is in compliance with 160D. On August 5th, staff had a modification requested prior to the final plat approval for Northridge Commons. And this adjustment was a minor adjustment of building location for units 34 through 38. This is for your information and reported to you in that way. I am going to skip to the final two, and then come back and let the mayor do the presentation of the proclamation, if that is okay with you, Mr. Mayor. On page 30, you have two road closure ordinances. One is for Ardent Autumn. That is September 17th from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Then you have the road closure ordinance for the North Buncombe High School Homecoming Parade. Both of those have been approved by the state and now are before you for your approval. Finally, a resolution supporting the option for remote hybrid public meetings. At your July meeting, you asked that staff bring back to you a resolution to go to the legislature requesting that town council be able to hold public meetings electronically or as hybrid meetings outside of the emergency declaration that we recently had. That, along with the proclamation, wraps up the consent agenda.
Thank you. Before I do the proclamation, are there any questions for the town manager on the consent agenda? Hearing none, well, let me finish the proclamation and we'll do that. Amy Mensch, would you come up? So Amy Mensch has been very active in trying to promote awareness about childhood cancer. And I'm not going to read this full proclamation for you, and I can read it along. But whereas childhood cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in children, and whereas too many children are affected by this deadly disease, and more must be done to raise awareness to find a cure, I, as the mayor of Weaverville, do hereby proclaim September 2022 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the town of Weaverville, North Carolina. I encourage all citizens to observe Childhood Cancer Awareness Month and support this cause that so deeply impacts families in every community across our country. And thank you for your work. Would you like to say something?
Yeah. I want to thank you first of all for doing this. It means a lot to me and to my fellow mothers. Brittany here is also a mom of a little girl that's my daughter, Tina, her daughter Brooklyn. And we just live right here. And it affects more than you think. And when it does, your life's forever to change. So we appreciate anything anybody does. We appreciate the police department that calls out, has stepped up to show awareness. And I just know that you're a fan of flags. So thank you. Sorry, I know it's kind of fun. And so I want to thank you too for doing this. And if anyone ever wants to reach out and find ways to help our kids, always you can look me up. You can ask these people, how do you get in touch? And I'd be happy to talk to you. So thank you very much.
And thank you.
Appreciate it.
Put the left of over here. The next item is our town manager's report. Oh, forgot to finish.
We need approval
That's
of
fine.
motion to.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Now, town manager's report.
I apologize for having. On page 38 and 39, you have a copy of my August report to you. Just to let you know that town council's workshop in September, which is scheduled for the 20th at 6 p.m. to focus on the bike ped plan. That final plan will be presented to you. You'll have an opportunity for discussion and action if you so choose at that point in time. Also to let you know that the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund grant application unfortunately was denied. We do have the opportunity to reapply for those funds, and we are working with the Withers now to go ahead and do that. We believe that there are a few more points that we can get in this upcoming funding cycle. Also, 9/11 observance will be held on September 12th at 11 a.m. at the stage at Lake Louise. In the case of rain, obviously, it will be at the community center up the hill. But the Patriotic Committee has been working on it, and making everything happen there. During your budget conversations, you discussed the conservation of fuel. And I believe we started at a 30% increase in fuel budget for the upcoming year, and then I think we bumped that up to a 50% increase. Since that time, our department heads have worked on a preliminary list, which you see there on the second half of page 38 and then the rest of 39, where they have started the list of how they may look at conservation efforts. I think it's a very good list so far. I think with a little more time and experience, we can come up with some additional items that we can include. I'm not going to take you through that. You have that before you. I'm not going to take you through that unless you just want me to go through all those bullets. But basically, we're looking at things like changing the way we're doing things, using electric equipment as much as possible. Also using, for public works, we do have some UTV vehicles that we can use around town to do things. Also, the police department has continued with replacement of patrol vehicles with the hybrid SUVs. That has continued. And then we would recommend that going forward that we begin looking at more EV and/or hybrid replacement vehicles as we go forward. The last couple of years, we haven't had vehicles that need to be replaced outside of the police department patrol vehicles that are on a 2-year replacement cycle, 2 every year replacement cycle. But those are just some of the items that we've looked at so far. And we have actually had a conversation with some folks from Land of Sky just last week about the potential for grant funding to cover a street sweeper that is completely EV. So we're looking at the options with regard to equipment and future vehicle replacements. Any questions on manager's report?
As it relates to our continued growth of EV, I think we should research solar panels, potential of our own, on top of the things to charge the vehicles. So I know we've looked at solar panels.
Did you speak in the speaker?
Sorry about that. What I said was, as we grow our EV fleet, we should look into solar panels to charge the vehicles. So we can partner or talk to one county about maybe we're getting quotes out on solar panels. But I think that's a good place to start at Public Works and police department. I don't know what the cost to do that versus running the whole building, at least if we charge our vehicles with solar.
Absolutely.
You have questions for the manager?
No.
Thank you for your report. So next is general public comments. So this is what we want to speak about any issue other than the Monticello Road project. And I'll just read my little statement here. Town Council appreciates the opportunity to hear from its residents and part of each of our regular meetings is reserved for that purpose. General public comments may be submitted during the meeting or in writing in advance on any meeting topic or any other item of interest. Normal rules of decorum apply to all comments, and duplicate comments are discouraged. Actions and behavior and questions or personal text will not be tolerated. This is the time for town council to listen and to learn from you all. General public comments section of the meeting will be limited to 20 minutes. We will allow more for the public input session needed. And we'll be given to those comments in attendance Comments during the meeting are generally limited to 3 minutes each. The town manager keeps the time on this very large clock she has here. If the alarm indicates your 3 minutes are up, I'm not going to cut you off in mid-sentence, but that means you need to wrap up your comments. If you wish to speak, you must identify yourself by name and state your street address. You must be recognized before giving your comment, and you must come to the podium and speak into the microphone so people can hear you. Written comments, timely received before the meeting will be provided to members of council, included as part of the minutes of the meeting and read into the record during the 20-minute general public comment period. If you want more information on how to submit comments, please contact Town Hall. So now there's two signs, correct? So I'm going to call your name, but is there anyone who wishes to speak on a matter other than the Monticello apartment complex issue?
Mark Parker, I am not a resident of the town or even Logan County, and I come here to address you tonight as a member of the reunion committee of the 1982 class of Clyde Airwood. And we had the distinct pleasure of using the community center this past weekend for our high school reunion, and I had the distinct pleasure of actually recommending that venue to our classmates, and everyone loved it, and I wanted to congratulate the town on such a wonderful venue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're glad to be put to good use. So therefore, I'm going to assume everyone else on the list wants to speak on the apartment complex issue, and so we'll get to that in just a few moments. Having concluded that, we'll move on to our discussion and action items. The first item on our agenda meeting is the Weaverville Center for Creative and Healthy Living. We're going to get an update on that. I have learned that we now are referring to this lengthy name by its acronym WICL. So, Town Attorney, would you give us an update on WICL?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Weaverville Center for Creative and Healthy Living Incorporated is a private nonprofit corporation that has tax exempt status and has been working, believe it or not, for almost a full year in providing a variety of free programming within the community center. I'm coming to you today because town council was generous enough in your budget to provide this group with $5,000 towards its programming efforts. And we needed to put some language in the memorandum of understanding that talks about the eligible uses and the reporting on that. And so I would ask that there is a revised memorandum of understanding in your packet. Happy to answer any questions about that, but the primary purpose of the amendments is to deal with those town grant funds. I will say the other, there was another substantive amendment that I threw in there. It was originally contemplated as a 2-year agreement. We're a year into that, and so I in consultation with Tom Balstrary, we agreed that it might be good to bump that out to 3 years. So this is your 1 year, if approved, you're 1 year into a 3-year agreement with them. So would ask your approval on the memorandum of understanding. And then I think that the mayor would like to recognize some folks that have been very instrumental in making these efforts happen. Mr. Balsheri has certainly led those efforts and has been in close coordination with our recreation coordinator, Shelby Stovall.
Thank you. I'd like to point out that we have a lot of activity, a lot of classes and other types of activities happening at the community center due to the work of this all volunteer force. In many cities, you have to hire recreation staff to do what we're having accomplished all by volunteers. And I think Tom Balstrary is here, so Tom, please stand up so we can see you and recognize you. Thank you for your work, sir. Tom has led this effort, and there's everything going there now, from yoga to storytelling to music, all kinds of things. And I have a list here, which I won't read all of these, because there are 26 instructors or activity champions who are leading various types of programs in the community. So it's really great that our new center is being so actively used, and that there's so many volunteers who want to come forth and offer their skills. So thanks to all of you activity champions, and who wouldn't want to be an activity champion? And so now, are there any questions for the committee with regard to the memorandum of understanding with Weaverville?
I have a quick question. Is it too late to add something in here that changes officially the name of the pickleball courts to the wickleball courts?
Different matter, but I like where you're,
You should understand that pickleball has been quite an active subject throughout our recreation complex discussions, so good community. So I need a motion to accept the revised memorandum of understanding with Weaverville.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Tom, you still have a job.
where you going?
Next item is progress on the action plan for our water system recommendations. You all recall that 2 months ago, town council approved a series of, our resolution that had a series of steps to improve our water capacity for the future. And the town manager is going to go over an action plan sheet device and give you some progress updates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Beginning on page 47, you will see an action plan that is frankly not complete, and will be filled out and completed as we go. But we feel like it was important for staff to have a way to report back to you on the resolution items that were approved on June 27th. So, and I apologize for the size of what you see on paper. It is much better on the screens. I'm not going to go through this entire action plan, and certainly staff is happy to answer any questions that you may have. But essentially what we've tried to do with this is in the lighter blue color, those are specific section or statements as pulled out from the resolution that was approved in June. And then below that are what I would say are the action steps to get us to those resolution statements. So this document is a plan. We would anticipate it changing as we go along, as we add sub-action steps and that sort of thing. We would anticipate that this would change for you. And what I would propose to you, and what we will do, unless you want it more regularly, is provide this back to you every month as going forward. And during those meetings, we'll talk about the new items that have been added or completed or checked off. But I think it's really important for us, at least at staff level, to have a plan in place and to have that plan set out who the responsible parties are for completing each task, the resources that may be needed, the timeline. The timeline goes directly back to that resolution. There are some specifics in the resolution, but some more broad time frames that staff will follow. But we plan on updating this as necessary and go forward at every meeting and update you as we move along. Are there specific questions that we need to try to address as we open this process up for you? Again, this is very much just this is to be provided to show you the format and the process that we plan on taking at the staff level.
Any questions from the manager? So I think the important thing is to let you know that there were 6 or 7 items in our resolution, and I think it's really good that the actions continue to take place and progress is being made on some of those already, and you'll see that progress every month as we go forward. not a plan sitting on a shelf. Thank you, Town Manager. Next item is our public input session on the LDG project. LDG is the name of the company that wants to build the apartments over on Monticello Road. And so this is a public input session. And I want to ask Landon Cox, who was with LDG, the developer, to come forward and explain the project first.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Landon Cox of LDG Development. I'm the development manager for the company. LDG develops affordable housing across the southeast, and our first proposed community in the Asheville area is we propose at 171 Monticello Road, and we've come before City Council to ask for water to be extended to the community from the city of Weaverville. You can go to the next slide. Next slide. So the community we are proposing would be for 168 multifamily units that would be spread across 7 buildings. It would be a garden style development, very similar to the two the communities nearby. It will come with all kinds of amenities for the residents, pool, workout facility, and will be it will be something we think the community will be proud to have. You can go to the next slide. What distinguishes the community we're proposing from the existing ones would be the income restricted units associated with it. So all 168 units of the community would have income restrictions on them, meaning we would set the units aside for folks who, for families or individuals who earn within a certain area median income brackets, which are displayed on the screen. So there would be 58 units of the 168 for folks that make 30% of the Asheville area median income. And you can see the household income restrictions would be between 15,000 to 24,000. 52 units would be set aside for folks who make between 28 and 46,000, thereabouts. And then the balance of 58 units would be for folks who make between 39,000 and 63,000. The community, in addition to having high quality housing, will have a robust resident services program. So we partner with a third party resident services provider who would come out and they poll residents during the lease up. And then they would have quarterly polling to update their findings and pull from a portfolio of about 150 different resident services to provide things that would help our residents improve their quality of life. So if the community is filled with children, then there'd be a lot of after school activities, summer school programs for kids that are in elementary, middle school, reading after school programs. If there happens to be a high immigrant population, they would do things like have immigrant attorneys come out and make sure folks in the community have a good sense of their rights. And so the benefit of having these is that they would kind of mold these programs around what the needs are and update those as the needs of the community evolve. Go to the next slide. So when we're choosing a location to put our communities, we look for a couple of different things. The first thing we look for is the need. What you can see here is a snippet of the demand study that we had performed on the area. And so really, if you look down at the bottom, you can see that there are, in the green, net demand, there are close to 1,300 households in the market area that are the market analyst thinks that we would draw residents from who qualify to live at our community in one of the income bands. You can see it on the line just above that, comparable units are 0 across the board. So there aren't any comparable units. And this is the northern half, more or less, of Buncombe County. So big need in the area. You can go to the next slide. The second thing we look for, proximity to amenities. We think this location on Monticello Road jumped out at us in particular because of the proximity to retail outlets, to pharmacies, schools. Our residents to be able to live their lives completely within about 2 mile radius, say maybe commuting to work. So those are the two most important things for us. We're looking for a location. You can go to the next. The rest of the slides are just images of similar properties to what we would have here. The design would kind of come later on, but it would be kind of common area amenities, library, children's play area, workout, pool, grill facilities. You can go to the last slide. And those are some interior pictures of the units. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Cox?
Can you tell me again how you come up with the 1,280 for demand? Is it 28787 zip code, or how is it?
So, well, it's a bit of, I think, market analyst magic. They would look at a combination, I think, of geographic boundaries. Frankly, I don't know all that they go into, but it's a third party independent company that would look at, I think, concentrations of jobs, traffic patterns, things of that nature. And then they kind of create what they think would be the outer limits of the area that it would pull from. And so in this case, it kind of goes up to the county borders, kind of the northeast, northwest, and then down south, not quite to downtown Asheville, but in that direction. But the numbers, basically what they do, they would look at the latest census data. So every year, the Census Bureau releases household income figures. And then after they kind of set the area that they think the residents would pull from, they compute the number of households that are in that area that meet the income criteria that we set for them. It's kind of a quick way to say it.
Is there like a radius, like 5 miles from here, or did you look at other areas in Buncombe County?
Sure, yeah. We're looking at several different locations in Buncombe County, and this will not be the only community in the county, but it varies. So if we're in a really dense urban area, the market area would probably be smaller. And then as you kind of get out of denser urban areas, the radius kind of grows a little bit. But they follow a standardized procedure for setting the market areas. It's approved by the state housing agency who issues the tax credits. I don't know what detail about specifically how they came up with the boundaries.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to look into it.
I've heard some concerns that this is Section 8 housing. Could you, and this is HUD, correct? Could you explain to us what the difference is between Section 8 and HUD?
Well, I don't know if I can tell you too much detail about Section 8. These communities are financed using low-income housing tax credits, which are issued through HUD, and the state distributes those around. I think when most people say Section 8, they're thinking of housing authority owned properties, which this is not. We're a private owner, a private developer. We own and operate them long term. So while our funding maybe originates from the same source, maybe federal government, the structure is just completely different. We vouchers come to mind. I think when people think of Section 8, we cannot turn folks away that have vouchers to our community. So if they qualify to live in one of the units, then we would accept the tenant voucher that they put forward. Which I would answer your question.
Will this be nonprofit venture or?
So LPG is a for-profit company, but we partnered with a nonprofit developer that is headquartered out of Charlotte. So there would be both for-profit and nonprofit involvement. But the ownership entity itself is a nonprofit.
Are the 150 programs that are offered free to the residents?
Free, yeah, non-compulsory, but completely free to residents.
Thanks for
Yes.
And I can explain things. So, once it's developed, and done in a non-profit ownership situation, does that group pay any town or county, property taxes?
They would not. The goal is, of course, we don't know until it's over and then you submit a request to the tax assessor, but we expect that this community would not pay any property taxes.
The people that live there, what utilities do they pay for out of their own pot?
So the community pays for water, sewer, trash, and the rest of the utilities we pay for by the tenant. So they would pay electric, HVAC, basically it would be their electric bill and cable internet.
So, because of this being a water, allocation request, so I'm gonna back up one step, because I think the mayor pointed out that there was maybe some, comments made that the community didn't know about it. Has there been an application to the county yet for any development?
We've not submitted our final application.
Right, okay, so this is our antiquated, I think, way we go about doing things as a group in the area. So there's no zoning request, there's no public signs on the side of the road to tell the neighbors something's going on. I drove by it the other day, there's a for sale sign.
Yeah, not the moment, but
Right,
yeah.
and no criticism of you, just criticism of us between the county and the town of Weaverville. So there's a for sale sign, there's nothing telling anybody who's living on the road other than if you pay attention to here, that potentially 168 units are gonna be built on that property. So, I have firsthand experience with that with a substation next to me. So we treated that like it was a small zoning change. So we're gonna get to water. So I think we've talked, and you know my opinion about the water. So the county's gonna get no property tax, the town's gonna get no property tax. So why not annex it? Why shouldn't the town actually annex this project if we're gonna sell water? So I think I've been clear for the last several years that I'm not in favor of selling water outside of the town limits. Why? Because we charge twice the rate. Okay, so people in need are moving in here, and they're not paying their water bill, and somebody's paying their water bill. So I have a simple line, I was a C student. Somebody's paying for the water, and we're gonna charge this group twice the going rate. That to me, I can't justify those two things, whether I want to approve the project or not approve it. Selling people in financial need water at twice the rate is illogical. So if we sold the ownership group the water at the standard rate and annexed them, there would be, in theory, more money, more tax dollars for something else. So that's not a question, obviously, it's just a statement that I can't get my head around. The other conversation that has happened internally is the density. So it's greater density than our normal density. So one reason to leave it in the county, but we have conditional zoning. And I brought up in the past, we'll pick on Lake Louise and across from the sample group. I don't remember how many apartments are going over in that current project. 132, thank you, sir. And on that property, if I'm guessing right, out of the 11 something acres, only 8.5 were usable. So the density is actually more dense anyways because of the floodplain. So I don't buy density as an excuse. If we approve the water project, we are saying we're in favor of this project. So whether we annex them or not, if we sell them water, everybody on council is saying this is a good project and I want to do it. Guys buy, we didn't annex them. And they were going to build it anyway. So I'm so glad you decided to punt for the evening. And because I do think a lot of people were caught off guard. So I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. I'll stop talking.
Thank you, Mr. Nagle. And just, Andrew's bringing up, the reason that no kind of postings have been done is because there hasn't been an actual application made to the county for the project yet. Once that is done, then there would be signs and publications and whatnot, so that's why it was not. But anyway, thank you. Any more questions from Mr. Cox? Thank you, Mr. Cox, appreciate it. Next is Amanda Edwards. And Dr. Quinez, if you probably recognize this person, Amanda Edwards is our county commissioner representing district, whatever district, I'm probably going to say.
Good evening, Mayor Fitzsimmons and council members. I am Amanda Edwards, a Weaverville resident and vice chair of the Buncombe County Commission. I'm here this evening to share some information as a member of the County Commission's Affordable Housing Subcommittee and why the county decided to support the proposal from the Monticello Family Housing. As we are all too aware, our community is facing a shortage of housing that is affordable to our working families as well as for our senior citizens who are living on a fixed income. Rental rates in Buncombe County have increased by 20% alone this year. This is a challenge that impacts a broad cross-section of our community, including teachers, firefighters, police officers, and our small business owners and employees, who we know are the heart of our local economy. The responsibility of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee is to review the proposals that are submitted to support construction of more affordable housing, and then to make recommendations to the Commission for how we most effectively invest our public funds to address this vital need. Based on our review of all the projects that were submitted, we recommended an investment of $1.5 million in the form of a low-interest loan to the Monticello Family Housing proposal. This recommendation was supported by all 7 Buncombe County Commissioners. Having served on the Affordable Housing Committee for the past 3 years, I can honestly say this is one of the most valuable projects that we have seen. The plans, as you can see, provide a healthy mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments at very moderate and affordable prices. The designs offer a home for families with children, again, as well as our senior citizens. The project is also located directly on a mountain mobility trailblazer bus route. This project is a responsible investment from a county taxpayer perspective. LDG has structured their plans to utilize the National Affordable Housing Tax Credit Program, which means that our Buncombe County $1.5 million investment will leverage more than $10 million in additional funds. Because of this, and because LDG has agreed to significantly reduce their developer fees, which other builders are often reluctant to do. The Monticello Family Housing requires a lower amount of community taxpayer support than any other project that we have seen in the 3 years since our subcommittee was formed. Growth and development are never easy issues. We wrestle with it as Buncombe County Commissioners do. But the one thing that is clear is that we must do more to support the people who work in our community so they can afford to live in our community. People want to live in Weaverville, and we want to find a way for them to live in this great place that we get to call home. This project will make a positive and meaningful difference in the important effort of affordable housing in Buncombe County. Thank you all for allowing me to represent Buncombe County Commission and the Affordable Housing Subcommittee to share our perspective this evening.
Thank you very much. Ruth Smith?
Good evening. My name is Ruth Smith, and I'm here on behalf of the Pine Rose Homeowners Association, which is located just west of Monticello Road, and I represent about 100 residents at that location. This is an ill-advised project for several reasons. First of all, Monticello Road is already congested and burdened with traffic from 2 previous mega complexes that have just gone up. But additionally, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is that this is a designated low-income government subsidized project. Although the proponents of the project are touting the need for affordable housing, they are ignoring the strain on the resources that this will create. Mountain Housing Opportunities, I believe, is a partner on this project, and they've opened a very similar project in Asheville with almost identical income requirements that's called Maple Crest. Although only a year old, Maple Crest sees significantly more crime in the surrounding apartment complexes and includes a still unsolved murder from last month. Although only a year old, this is what their residents have said on Google and apartmentfinders.com. Quote, save your family from this place. The worst place to live. A lot of drugs, weapons. Your family is not safe in this place. Another wrote, this place is quickly turning into the projects, a real disappointment. Another writes, not a safe place. I've only been staying here for less than 1 month. And another wrote, my mom is elderly, was a good choice due to her income. Now young people smoke weed all the time. The lobby is dirty. I dread driving in the parking lot. It is not safe. I've heard no evidence that this apartment, which is almost identical to Maple Crest, will be any different. Except here we don't have a large municipal police department to provide protection or enforcement. Instead, since it's outside of the city limits, the only ones who will be providing protection is the sheriff, and they are already thin and then in North Bucko. It's irresponsible to put a project up here that you cannot provide safety to, either to the persons who live there or the persons who are their neighbors. Although it's a laudable goal, this location is not suitable for the people on this scale or this nature. As such, I ask you to vote no in allowing this project and to save Monticello. Thank you.
Latasha Vandermeer. Yes, and that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Harry Harper.
Good afternoon. My name is Harry Harper, and I live at 28 Hawtree Court. I'm here today to explain why you should deny the application for water service for the apartment complex on Monticello Road. First thing I want to do is thank you all for your service as representatives of this community. It takes a lot of time and effort, and we appreciate what you do. Now, by granting you, by your accepting the position as our representatives, it means we've entrusted you to act in our best interest and not the interests of developers or people who are presently not residents of Weaverville, maybe people who want to come here, but you don't represent them. You represent us. Now, providing potable water is the single most important function that a community government can do. We can live without schools, we can live without police, we can live without fire, we can live without libraries, but we cannot live without water. Water is essential. Now, the town of Weaverville has been providing water for 110 years. So, the most important responsibility that you've been entrusted with is to guarantee that the water supply is never jeopardized. That's it. You will never have a more important decision to make. So, in making decisions now that could later cause a water crisis is not a legacy that you do. Now, the following facts, I think, demonstrate why the request must be denied. So the first thing is, so the town ordinance, section 30-80, paragraph 5, allows you to extend the water system to serve properties outside the town when it determines that it is in the best interest of the town to do so. Not Buncombe County, not developers, not people who want to move here. The best interest of the town, and the town is us. So how can this possibly be in the best interest of the town? The answer is it can't. The current projected water demands from the Public Works Director is roughly 970,000 gallons a day for the entire town. The developer wants over 56,000 gallons of it. That's roughly 6% or 1/17 of the entire town water supply. That's just one project that's not even in the town. The town council agenda item, page 50, mentions the product has a grant from Buncombe County. We just heard from one of the commissioners. And that's the basis for the recommendation, and Buncombe County can do as they please, so they can provide whatever services that they would like to provide, but it's your responsibility today to represent the people of this town and do what they want and preserve their resources. We don't need another apartment complex right now. The ones built don't have full occupancy. We don't need the traffic. We don't need the crime. We don't need the burden on taxpayers. You cannot assume that we just increase the output. The Big Ivy River is a big future weather.
I'm asking you about your comments.
Sir,
I'm asking you about your comments.
please don't pay Paradise and put it in the parking lot.
Thank you. Eileen Ryman.
Good evening. My name is Eileen Reedman. I live at 5 East Rolling Acres. I'm a little nervous. I'm going to read, and now that you're not voting, you'll understand some of my comments. But tonight we'll be asked to vote on the water allocation for the multifamily project at 171 Monticello Road. I implore you to vote no. This project would mean the fourth high-density apartment complex within a half a mile on Monticello Road. That does not include the unfinished townhomes across the street, nor the planned project behind CVS. If you say yes, you are agreeing to the project as it's planned right now. Just because the water system currently has the capacity and that Weaverville will be able to charge double the rate does not mean this is good for Weaverville or the surrounding area. This project will further contribute to the high traffic problems on Monticello and on Weaver Boulevard. This will also contribute to the cumulative effects of high-density projects that add air, noise, light, pollution, and environmental impacts to the area. Let us grow this region wisely and not so densely, so quickly. I would like to sound more educated or nuanced on the subject of myself and my neighbors who directly adjoin this property found out last Thursday. I heard it from one of them Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Developers state they want to work with us, however, I did not speak to the representative until Friday at 8 p.m., and this meeting was not mentioned. As I know you have heard about this much sooner, I ask that you decline at this time so as to investigate more opportunities, which I appreciate your delaying this vote. Why not build low-income single-family homes or duplexes? Why not have a multi-use retail with low-income apartments above it? These ideas are what the property is zoned for. And even though you do not decide the zoning, if you agree to give water to the property as it is presented to you, you are agreeing to another high-density project that would be detrimental. Please do the right thing and decline it as it stands. As a neighbor, I would be happy to work with the builder and the town and the county on a better solution. I apologize for my emotion. I'd also like to read a statement from my neighbor who could not be here. He said, as a homeowner, he lives next door to me, also next to this project. As a homeowner, we would like to bring the following observations to light. The water analysis as documented in the agenda for this evening depicts studies performed by only the developer and the public works director, both of whom would benefit directly or indirectly by the expansion of the town in the form of development approval or approval of future water treatment facility and or budget. It would be my recommendation that a third-party engineer or firm be utilized to provide a non-biased opinion of the current system, along with analysis of how recent developments have performed in comparison to the projected usage. This is a reasonable request that would benefit all parties involved. I do hope I still get my extra 3 minutes. I have one more statement to read.
I'm going to give 3 extra minutes, but go ahead.
Oh, I thought somebody was giving me hers.
Yeah, a number of people.
I'm sorry.
Am I not correct?
I'm changing for my.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm sorry. This is another neighbor who had to work and could not be here tonight. She's writing as a resident of Rolling Acres Development in Weaverville off of Monticello Road that is directly adjacent to the housing project being reviewed by tonight's town council meeting. Although I'm generally in favor of adding more affordable housing to our region, we must know that there is a strong objection to this project in our neighborhood. Our concern is that in the past 3 years alone, 4 large dense housing complex apartments, condos, and townhomes have been rapidly built on or near the corner of Monticello and Route 2570. This was preceded by a large shopping area at the Northridge Commons, anchored by Walmart and Lowe's, with more box stores on the way. What you're supporting would put another 168 units of multi-story buildings directly behind us with only a fence between us. The additional impact of the noise and traffic will be exponential. Monticello is a 2-lane road that is not equipped to handle many hundreds of additional vehicles. The ingress and egress to the existing neighborhoods along Monticello will be hugely compromised, and I can speak to that. I can barely turn out of my driveway on taking my kids to school as it is. I've been a resident of this neighborhood for 21 years. From the perspective of Rolling Acres residents, and the town of Weaverville has a history of approving development that is conveniently outside its own town limits so as to preserve its idyllic small town atmosphere. For many years, our neighborhood was within what was called the extraterritorial jurisdiction, which meant that Weaverville had development control of 1 mile radius beyond its town limits. The town approved the Northridge Commons development, which brought in its water services to the west side of 26. The state of North Carolina subsequently did away with the ETGA classifications, and we are now under the planning and zoning jurisdiction of Buncombe County. The only reason we can see that the town of Weaverville would be interested in this project at this time would be to gain more water customers, not necessarily support affordable housing. And water customers outside the town limits earn the town more revenue than customers in it. And it is unclear at this time whether annexation into the town of this property is being considered to gain more tax revenue. The residents of Rolling Acres only found out about this project by happenstance when Crystal Legal sent out an alert. We have no official notice of this planned development. We ask that you put this on hold so that more extensive traffic impact study can be obtained through Buncombe County and planning process. We applaud your efforts to champion affordable housing in Buncombe County. To be clear, this is not a case of not my backyard objection based on any real or perceived prejudice of people who require housing assistance. Our objection is the rapid increase of dense development in this part of the county raises serious concerns about the impact on its existing residents. We too consider ourselves part of a larger Weaverville community, and we ask that your consideration be given to our needs as well. Just Horn Hedberg, has lived there for quite a long time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am. Joan Johnson.
Hi, thanks to all of you for all the service you do for our community. I know it's a lot of work, and I appreciate the opportunity to have all of us speak our opinion and our thoughts on this subject. And hearing everyone's perspective has been just really enlightening. Thank you for that.
Can you give us your name and address?
Yes, my name is Joan D'Entremont. I live at 12 Alabama in Weaverville, in the town of Weaverville. I'm here with my husband. We both wanted to just share our brief perspective. That we both have family and friends that have lived in substandard housing. They could never afford the apartment complexes that we have put up already. And they may never be able to afford a house. You know, they don't own homes in this region, probably never will. And that's really a privilege that the rest of us probably enjoy. And renters lose out on that investment in their life that appreciates and provides housing security for their future. Where, again, most of us just enjoy. In our community, I really can't say much more than Amanda Edwards has already said. Thank you for all of your words. It is that these are also people that live in poverty, our seniors, that have no increased income coming in their life. And that this would, an affordable housing would give them a place they can feel secure and have the standard of living that they may not perhaps have now. So my husband and I both believe that we can the least we can do is create more affordable housing. And that does mean accessible housing, not pushing them further out. These are people that need access to the things that we enjoy, the conveniences of running over to Weaverville Boulevard, the conveniences of working in a job where they don't have to travel for 10 miles to get to their job. So we do support the development, and I know that you're going to weigh this, and I trust that you'll make the right decision, not just for us to live here, but for those that would like to live here and that will inevitably live here and need to have an affordable place to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lucy Kyle.
Hi, I'm Lucy Kyle. I live on Britton Cove Road in Weaverville. Commissioner Edwards has already said much of what I wanted to say, but I'll speak anyway. Ever since we moved to Weaverville over 21 years ago, I've heard reports about the need for affordable housing. As you well know, housing costs are high in the county and continue to get higher. Many people who work here can't afford to live here. Being forced to find housing far from work is an economic burden on those people, and it also harms our environment because of the increased pollution from driving. The Monticello project will benefit our community as well as benefiting the people who find housing there. It's been called one of the most significant affordable housing projects in many years. And I was impressed by the details we got from the LGP speaker tonight and all the services they're going to offer. I want to urge you to vote yes on the water infrastructure proposal. I and many others will be proud of Weaverville if we make this possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pamela Retzloff.
Hi, my name is Pamela Retzloff, and I live at 12 East Green Acres. Thank you for considering what we have to say. I'd like to make a few points. Number one, if this is too dense a project for you to approve within the city limits, it is too dense a project to give your tacit approval by supplying the water. Number two, we have more than 100 years of experience of what happens when all the high-density housing is grouped together. And it does not turn out well. Decades down the road, it definitely does not turn out well when the energy and the enthusiasm and all the pledges to do well are done. I want to say that when you experience the town of Weaverville, the line that defines the city limits does not define your experience of the town of Weaverville. This project is within the area that is the town. And if you string lots of high-density projects, one after the other in an area, the character of that area, the character of the town will be changed. A high-density housing needs to be scattered through the county. That is a way to tamp some of the negative things that come with high-density housing. I'd also like to say this is a fad. Pushing high-density housing into suburban areas is a fad. This fad will pass. It will become dated. And when that happens, there will be people who count the costs and see the negative impacts that have happened. I hope that when that time comes, you will have the opportunity to know that you have the courage to stand for the character of our town of Weaverville and not diminish that character by creating a lengthy area of high-density housing. I'd like to make another point. A neighbor gave me permission. There's a neighbor in our neighborhood. They are a young family.
And they have done exactly what you would hope that young citizens of Weaverville would do. We have watched their family grow from just a married couple to a couple with 3 children. They built one house in the neighborhood that was lovely when they outgrew it. They sold it and built another larger house. And they relied, as many reasonable people did, on the R3 zoning of this area. This high-density housing will be 30 feet from their backyard. And the mother said, I would speak at the meeting, but I've been sobbing about this and I would just sob again. So I urge you to deny this request. It's already been apparent in this meeting that there is anticipated water concerns in this town, and that should have to do with the decision. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to agenda item D, recreation complex, redesign concept plan, and public infrastructure penalty. Can you tell us about the new plan?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Page 55, 56, and 57 in the package. You got some information there about the recreation complex down near the community center. Back in March, we discussed our first concept plan for that complex. And basically try to put 5 pounds of sugar in a 4-pound bag of that plan, and it all fit. But since then, we have certainly seen need for more parking. We have had multiple events at the community center that exceeded the amount of parking that was at the community center, even to the point in May when there was a program for the Ukrainian benefit, that we actually added temporary parking on this recreation complex property, about 22 spaces. That night, 28 of those spaces was filled. Those numbers are correct. And since then, it's been used on multiple occasions on both weekends and every Wednesday for the farmers market. So after discussions with the town manager, it became apparent that we needed to give a little more thought to the recreation complex so that we could have adequate parking there to serve the needs of those folks that will be using that complex in the future. So on page 56, you have a revised plan there. Let me explain what it did to add this parking. We deleted the tennis court because I needed about half of it to expand the parking area, and we deleted one of the pickleball courts. But we used the remainder of the tennis court to add 2 more pickleball courts. So we basically have 4 pickleball courts shown. We were able to retain the basketball area, the picnic shelter, the lawn games area, and end up with about 26 parking spaces. And under most of the scenarios for the use of the pickleball courts, if just a few people carpool, then there's adequate parking to have 4 courts being used at one time, and the next 4 courts of players waiting for them to play, as well as being used for overflow at times for the community center. So this plan that has been revised, I think will give us what we need to be able to adequately provide parking for the users of the recreation complex. And if you want to proceed with this, then I'm ready to get some help and try to get this done. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
On the sheet here, is that item 7, it's identified on the pages, is that for parking?
The little number 7 there? That's 7 regular parking spaces in addition to 3 handicap spaces in addition to the 16 spaces.
On page 55 is a very good summary of the difference in from the first plan to the revised plan. So what you see is essentially the addition of the 23 regular spaces going from 3 pickleball courts to 4 pickleball courts, and then making the family lawn game area slightly smaller.
Great plan.
It's wonderful. I love it. Can I ask a question? Is the trail from the community center down to the lower parking lot already there?
No,
Okay.
it can't be.
So what I would recommend that you do is give us the go-ahead to proceed. The way that I see this working is that Dale would act as our general contractor, project manager, which is what he does for our projects anyway. And then we would subcontract out portions of the project that we can't do ourselves. I want to again remind town council that as we go forward, and I'm all for going forward with this and getting it done, as we go forward, we have to remember that every time we add facilities, we've got to remember that we've got only a certain amount of staff. So just as I like to give you the strategic view into the future, so remember that when we look at future and the amount of buildings and grounds that our current staff is really doing a fantastic job keeping up with right now.
You missed the memo, though. It's not pickleball.
It'll be forever known as local law now.
I do have, I think this is a great plan, but before we would move completely forward, I guess I would ask the question of, at what point in time will we come up with the hours that this place is open? It does not need to be open 24 hours a day. And so we did read an article of another town where, people don't want to hear the pickleball being slapped around after a certain time at night. So I don't know whether or not there'll be a gate. I don't know if there'll be signs or if there'll be lights, but those are the kind of things I think we will be responsible for knowing.
I would anticipate that we will have lights, signs, and all of those things, but lights will be later. Wouldn't anticipate that we would have lights as part of the project initially. Obviously, between now and the time that the facility will be open for use, we would have some policies and procedures in place as to how late it's open. I would anticipate though that it would be a gated area, in that we do have, we would want to ensure that after a certain period of time, folks couldn't have real easy access to the restroom building that's there and that sort of thing.
And I wasn't thinking lights so that you could play pickleball. I was thinking lights for security purposes so that there would be vandalism.
And as you all know, we have really done a lot in the last 2 years. And I apologize for this scratchy sound. It's driving me crazy too. Over the last couple of years, we have done really well at installing security cameras throughout our buildings as well as our facilities, and I would anticipate that this would be no different. We would have to install security cameras, and now that we have Wi-Fi, also at Lake Louise, this would be an easy access point for that as well.
So do we have to vote on this?
Is there any questions for the voters?
I had one question, emergency vehicle access and turnaround or exiting or backing out. If a larger vehicle, when they're backing out onto that road, would be difficult, but I guess with some help it could happen.
That's what we anticipated. If they did have to come in, either ambulance wise or fire truck or something else, they always have enough folks in that vehicle to help just block traffic while they block, come back out on Lakeshore Drive.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Would someone to make a motion to approve this new design?
We're in favor of this.
So I think Catherine's making the motion and Doug would just make the second.
Yes.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you all very much. Thank you. Next item, item E, recommendation from Lake Louise Traffic Calming. And this again, just a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple of meetings ago, town council directed staff to move forward with coming back with a list of traffic calming recommendations for Lake Louise. So I'll say to you that all of our departments truly have met and have gone through a pretty extensive process of visiting and looking at signs and counting signs and looking at spaces where folks are walking, jogging, and enjoying the Lake Louise Park. So what you have there on page 58 is a pretty comprehensive list of the things that staff is proposing. And then on page 59 is some of Jennifer's artistic handiwork here at showing you where we would propose installing some traffic calming measures. But very briefly, just to hit the bullets on page 58. So what we would recommend is updating our signage. And that doesn't necessarily mean adding signs. I know this council is not real fond of signage. What we have found is that we believe we can post some better signs and take down some of the ones that are ineffective, and actually use some solar power at encouraging slower speeds around the lake. So I'm going to go back and forth between 58 and 59. So if you'll see the little, it looks like a little star. That's our flashing sign, solar signage that we would propose installing. And so you see that at 4 points there, strategically recommended by the police department. We would also look to standardizing the current signage for parking and other issues. And then we would add another 6 signs to encourage walkers and runners to stay on the trail. We do have a lot of folks that like to walk out in the road when they're walking around Lake Louise. And I'll tell you, even when you're looking for them, it can be very difficult and unsafe if folks are out in the road. So going on to the next section there, we would recommend this would be all a part of trying to keep folks on the trail as opposed to the road. We would look at installing an asphalt curbing, painted yellow for high visibility in the areas that you see there in yellow on the map. We would also then propose installing some lane delineation marker posts. That's those flexible posts that we've all seen. Some of us may have hit them. I have not, but no, not orange cones. You've seen them, and I'm sure many different places. They're usually white. Sometimes they're yellow, and most of the time they're flexible. Sometimes they're not flexible, and they just get knocked down and are broken. But sometimes they're flexible, and that if folks hit them with their car, they don't cause damage and they don't break. So we would propose using those marker posts in the areas that you see there. And so then in order to further increase the visibility, we would propose the existing signs that are there, they're wooden posts, or excuse me, existing posts that are there, they're wooden. We would paint those green with reflective striping to further encourage high visibility and folks to stay in the appropriate places. And then finally, there's a couple of areas where we're in red there in the map that we would propose improving the crosswalks. And these really need to happen right away. And actually, what we have already done is several of these things we've already put into place, or we've already scheduled. Public Works is already scheduled to begin working on them because they need to happen as a part of our typical budget. We are estimating that all of this is around 12,000-ish, and we believe that we can cover these items within the existing budgets. When we're looking at this various budgets, we believe that we can come up with the funds to cover all of these things. With that, we'll be happy to answer any questions you have, but I feel very strongly that this is a really good plan, and we need to go forward with it. And we think it's going to be an acceptable plan for both those that are concerned about safety as well as those that really use we have lots of folks that use the park. We want to make sure that we stay safe.
What questions do you have? Where's the speed bumps?
We are not recommending speed bumps. Okay.
I want to thank everybody on staff, police department, public works, everybody who worked on this. I think it looks very nice. I thank you for listening to people who come in and said they don't feel safe walking down there. We know that many more people are there now than there was 10 years ago. And so it is kind of funny when you drive around, and we all know what the speed limit is because maybe we grew up here, we've been here a long time. But with a lot of the new people that are coming in, I think that the speed limit is 55 everywhere to them. And so I think this will be great.
Any other questions? Someone make a motion to accept the recommendations from staff.
Make a motion.
Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
So that's one thing on this.
Yes, sir.
The speed limit pushing to 15 miles an hour. It's amazing how much more attention you get when you put something like 14, 16 miles an hour or something, rather than 15. I mean, I'm serious. They said, why didn't they put it in an even number? It gets the attention. They don't think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly, unfortunately, we would have to order custom signs, and I'm afraid our costs would go significantly higher with that, but it's probably a good, that's a good one.
Thank you. Next item is board applications, and I just want to bring the council's attention that next month is the normal end of term for our various boards and committees. And we have, some of the boards, we have people been serving for a very long time, which is wonderful, but it's also an opportunity to engage new people, younger people in some of these activities. So you'll see an application for the boards in your packets. I would encourage you over the next month to encourage people to apply to be on one of our boards. That includes one opening that will be available on the alcohol traffic control board, or one available on the planning board, one on the animal control board. Am I missing anything, Jennifer?
Possibly work adjustment.
And possibly one more, just so encourage you to encourage people to become applicants for these positions, and we can make decisions next month on board member replacements. I think it's encouraging that our current Citizens Academy has over 30 participants. All those people are great new possible board members and community members. So talk to folks you know, and who are responsible, and please have submit applications. Next item is the quarterly report from the fire department, and interim fire chief Davis, who gets to speak twice actually tonight.
Good evening. I agree. The fire department report is essentially like the previous quarterly report that you heard. The numbers were down slightly. They were 474 calls for service, and that was down slightly from 504 last quarter. The average response time, again, is slightly less than it was, but again, it's at 7 minutes and 21 seconds, and last quarter it was 7:36. The number of calls within the town limits is 252, and that's compared to 248 in the last quarter, so it's pretty much the same across all the categories. The only one that is different, it was because of the fire that was on Church Street, and that was a total fire loss of $161,200. But that's 22% of the total value structures was $506,000. Now, getting to the fire marshal's report on the next page on 64. As you can see, the fire marshal was quite busy and kind of changing gears. There was 8 events, and there was over 1,080, I believe, was the total number of kids that were in contact with the 8 events that the fire marshal had with the fire department. That, of course, affected the number of business inspections and things like that. I looked at these numbers to kind of reverse actually those commercial business inspections to pick up, and the number of the education classes to decline this next quarter. I don't know if anybody has more questions. No? Okay. And getting on to the police department, on page 66, as you can see that our numbers were up fairly substantially compared to the same period last year. It was up a total of 55%. Those numbers, if you remember 1 year ago, that this coincides with the level of COVID restrictions ending. So those numbers picked up quite dramatically. Those numbers also were affected with the numbers of arrests and accidents that we had, as you can see, going from 54 arrests this last quarter versus 9 the year before, 53 collisions, and 24 the year before. On the new posted speed limit on Maryland Avenue seems to be taking effect quite well. As a matter of fact, we had just 1 reported collision in that quarter. I don't think that was due to, I think it was driver inattention rather than speed right here east of that. Also, with the police activity report on the next page of 67, as you can see that those numbers, I like to see zeros on this page. So there was, these numbers were actually in line with the previous quarter and from the last year. Those number of reported incidents. Direct your attention to page 68 on the response times. These numbers are exactly the same from, or almost exactly the same from last year to this year. The only difference in that is that you look at 2022, which says the low priority response times. We were able to, as you know, this is a kind of a multi-year endeavor of getting our computer automated system, our CAD dispatching system, integrated with our RMS system. That has not been an easy endeavor, but there's times whenever those calls are held by dispatch. Now that they are computer generated around, they can be put into the patrol car more quickly, and the officers can return those calls more rapidly. So I think what we're seeing there is we can attribute that to the integration of our CAD and our records management systems. Then we'll go to 69, and 69, you might have seen the flashing and blinking lights and the signs that we have put out on Main Street, and this regards to southbound traffic. We did that for a 1 week period of time. We don't like to leave them out too long because actually for a number of reasons, what can affect those numbers. But we did the study over a 1 week period of time. Now, southbound traffic only. This does not pertain to south and northbound, southbound traffic only. That counts about 36,600 cars a week in there. And the average speed of all those vehicles, as you can imagine, because of the congestion, is about 18 miles an hour. That's just that point. They're, 85% of those vehicles that are traveling southbound are traveling at an average speed of 21 miles an hour. Now, I say, well, why 21 miles an hour? But that's 85th percentile, which means 85% of the traffic, and forgive me, Dale, for traffic engineering, it's not my expertise on the wording here, but that's the percentage that traffic engineers use as a standard to maintain traffic safety and move traffic along safely through a particular corridor. So 85% of the vehicles are traveling 21 miles an hour or less. And of course, most of the speed violations that we have are higher at night and during the times whenever there's not that much traffic out there because of congestion. Page 70 will give you an idea of the average number of speeding by volume. As you can see, that the vast majority of those are traveling 20 miles an hour or less, and then with those slightly above that from 21 to 25 miles an hour. On the last page that we have here, on page 71, it should come as no surprise that those are volumes that we have during the day. And of course, from 8 o'clock in the morning till about 8 o'clock at night is whenever our peak times are, and then you can associate the ones with lunch at 5 o'clock. I really look at these volumes to be quite a bit different here in about a week because of school, and I also actually look at those numbers that people who are speeding actually go down a little bit. It's just a guess on my part, but I think that's what we'll see. There's also no reported collisions along Main Street corridor in the last quarter. Does anybody have it?
I was wondering like how sophisticated the tracking is. I was standing in the library trying to watch, and people come in hot. So it's like 27 right there at the library is where it catches them. And then it looked like maybe it zoned in on one car, and then it wasn't, of course, tracking everything. It would only track that one car until it slowed down and got past the sign. And I couldn't figure out when it started tracking the second car.
You're quite right. That it can be very sensitive, and the more of an urban environment you get with more vehicles, the more errors that those machines can produce. So like the one that we have on Merriman Avenue, the data would probably be more accurate than the data that we have here. You see the digital sign at Lake Louise that we have out there. That actually picks up some of the traffic that's actually on Merriman Avenue. They don't go off on Merriman Avenue. So it's an adjustment in sensitivity and trying to track that maturity.
Any questions for the chief? Well, I love all this data stuff, chief, and we're interested to see what kind of data you're built from where you've got the sign place down on Merriman Avenue on Main Street. And it's also unfortunate that the benefit we experienced over the COVID years of a greatly reduced crime rate seems to have failed. So that's unfortunate for you and us. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Is there any other important business that needs to come before this evening? Hearing none, and we're adjourned.